Every market crash, millions of people make the exact same mistake. Not the wrong stock pick, not bad timing, not even bad luck. The mistake is a single button click, and it costs them everything. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. The crash itself rarely destroys people's wealth. What destroys it is the human sitting in front of the screen watching red numbers and deciding they simply cannot take it anymore. We've seen this play out over and over again for a century, and yet, here we are. So let me walk you through exactly what happens, why it happens, and what the small, almost suspiciously simple thing is that separates people who build fortunes during crashes from people who fund those fortunes for them. Picture this. The market is dropping, not dipping, dropping. Your portfolio is bleeding out in real time. Every refresh brings worse news. The TV is screaming, Twitter is screaming, your stomach is screaming, and somewhere in your skull, a very loud, very stupid part of your brain goes, "Get out, now, before it all hits zero." That feeling has a name, loss aversion. Behavioral finance researchers figured out that losing money hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the same amount feels good, double. So, when the market falls, your brain isn't running long-term calculations. It's doing one thing, trying to make the pain stop immediately. And so you sell. Click, done. And for about 30 seconds, relief. Beautiful, warm, completely false relief. What actually happened? You took a temporary loss on paper, a number that would have bounced back, and you made it permanent, real. Locked in forever. Congratulations, you just graduated from investor experiencing a bad quarter to person who definitely sold at the bottom. Here's a thought experiment. You own a house. Nice house, worth $400,000. One morning, your neighbor sprints across the lawn, eyes wild, screaming that he'll buy it right now for $280,000. Do you sell? Of course not. Because your neighbor's panic attack has absolutely nothing to do with what your house is worth. Its value is bricks and location and square footage, not his blood pressure. You'd tell him to calm down and go inside. But stocks are literally ownership stakes in real businesses, companies with employees, products, revenues, customers. And yet, the second those numbers turn red, people abandon every ounce of logic they possess and sell to whatever panicking neighbor is offering. Fascinating, really. The only way you actually permanently lose money in a crash is by selling. Before that click, it's just a number on a screen. The click is what makes it real. But here's the part that really hurts, and I mean financially hurts. It isn't just the loss on the way down. It's what you miss on the way back up. 2008, global financial crisis. The S&P 500 fell over 50%. Let's say two people both had $100,000 invested. Both watched it crater to $50,000. One of them, call him Bob, decided he'd had enough, sold everything. $50,000 locked in as a real loss. Pain stopped. Story over. The other person, Susan, also felt that exact same sickening drop. Did nothing. Just sat there. Held. By early 2013, the market was fully recovered. Susan's $100,000 was back, and then some, as one of the longest bull markets in history got underway. Bob locked in a $50,000 loss and then had to buy back in at much higher prices to participate in that recovery. Sell low, buy high. The timeless classic. And before you think this is ancient history, 2020, COVID hits. The S&P 500 falls over 30% in a matter of weeks. Panic selling goes through the roof. The market then stages one of the fastest recoveries ever recorded, hitting new highs within months. People who bailed in March 2020 missed the entire thing. One analysis tracked what happens if an investor misses just the 20 best days in the market over a 25-year period. 20 days out of roughly 6,500 trading days. Miss those 20, and your returns get cut nearly in half. And those best days? They almost always happened right after the worst ones, right in the eye of the storm, when the panic is loudest. Every crash comes wrapped in a story. In the 70s, it was an oil embargo and the world running dry. In 2000, it was dot-com mania imploding. In 2008, it was the entire global banking system teetering. In 2020, it was a pandemic shutting down civilization. Each one felt singular, unprecedented, unsurvivable. And every single time, the market recovered. Every time. The mistake isn't the crash. The mistake is believing the story of panic over the evidence of 100 years of market history. If you've ever had that sick feeling watching your portfolio drop, hit the like button. It helps get this message out. Because right now, we're moving from the problem to something actually useful, a framework that doesn't just get you through the next crash, one that lets you profit from it. So, how do you beat the panic? How do you flip a financial disaster into an opportunity? It isn't a secret algorithm. It isn't insider knowledge. It's a framework. Call it the fortress strategy, and it runs on two engines, staying invested and buying more on the way down. First, the mindset. A crash isn't wealth being destroyed. It's wealth changing hands, moving from people who panic to people who don't. That's it. Think about what happens when your favorite store runs a 40% off sale. Do you run away? No, you buy more than you plan to. The stock market is no different, except somehow, when prices fall, people treat it like a fire rather than a discount. We're a peculiar species. This brings us to the second engine, dollar cost averaging, DCA, the most boring-sounding superpower in investing. Here's all it means. You invest a fixed amount on a regular schedule regardless of what the market's doing. That's it. A lot of people already do this through their 401k. Every paycheck, some money goes in, buys shares, end of story. Automated, emotionless. Why does this become a superpower during a crash? Say you put in $500 every month. When markets are high, $500 buys you fewer shares. When markets crater, that same $500 suddenly buys way more shares. You are mechanically, automatically, relentlessly buying more when things are cheap and less when they're expensive. No emotional decisions required. The system does it for you. Back to 2008. Bob panicked and sold. Susan held. Now meet Maria. Maria also started with $100,000 and also watched it fall. But Maria had prepared for this. She had cash set aside specifically for crashes, and she committed to deploying an extra $1,000 every single month during the downturn. Every month, her money was hoovering up shares at fire sale prices. Every month, her average cost per share fell lower. When the recovery hit, her original holdings bounced back, and every share she bought near the bottom exploded upward. Maria didn't get back to even. Maria lapped everyone. Funny how a plan does that. Now, a fortress also needs walls. That's where diversification comes in. Putting everything into a handful of high-growth tech stocks is not a portfolio. It's a bet. A real portfolio is built to weather storms, which means owning assets that behave differently from each other when recessions hit. High-quality bonds, government and corporate, often move in the opposite direction from stocks during panics. When equities are falling, investors flee to bonds, which pushes bond prices up. Many experts recommend keeping at least 20% in bonds as a shock absorber. Defensive sectors are another layer. Consumer staples, healthcare, utilities, companies selling groceries, medicine, electricity. People need these things in a recession just as much as in a boom. These sectors tend to hold up while everything else is getting obliterated. And then there's cash. Warren Buffett called it financial ammunition. Not because cash is a great investment, it isn't, but because having 3 to 6 months of living expenses in cash means two things. One, you never have to sell stocks at the worst possible time just to pay rent. Two, when everything goes on sale, you'll have actual bullets to fire. So, the full framework, mindset shift, crashes are sales, not disasters, dollar cost averaging, buy regularly, buy more when prices fall, diversification, Own things that don't all collapse simultaneously, cash reserves for survival and for opportunity. Emotion out, discipline in. That's the entire secret. Don't tell the finance industry. All right, theory is nice, history is better. Warren Buffett, fall of 2008. The financial system is actively melting. Banks are failing. The word depression is appearing in major newspapers without quotation marks. What's Buffett doing? He's writing an op-ed in the New York Times telling people he's buying American stocks. While the rest of the world is sprinting for the exit, he's walking toward it with a checkbook. He drops $5 billion into Goldman Sachs. At the exact moment it looks like Goldman might not exist in 6 months. That single move eventually netted Berkshire Hathaway over $3 billion in profit. Buffett openly admits he cannot predict recessions, never claimed to. He doesn't win by seeing the future. He wins because he understands one thing with absolute certainty. Recessions are temporary. They always end. And while they last, great businesses go on sale. That's not optimism. That's just reading the last 100 years of data. And this isn't exclusive to billionaires with $5 billion lying around. Consider Amazon. .com bust 2000. The Nasdaq falls nearly 80%. Amazon stock specifically crashes over 90% from its peak. Commentators are calling it Amazon.bomb. Analysts are writing the obituary. The company looks finished. If you bought Amazon in 1999 near the top and held through that collapse, you watched your investment drop to almost nothing. Every instinct, every financial pundit, every panicked headline told you to sell whatever fragments remained. Many did. But from its lowest point in 2001, Amazon stock went on to climb more than 30,000%. A $10,000 investment that looked like rubble turned into millions. Millions for doing nothing, for just not clicking sell. These aren't carefully selected feel-good exceptions, they are the rule. The market recovered from the Great Depression, though, yes, that took 25 years, which is admittedly a rough timeline. The 2008 crash took about 6 years to recover. The COVID crash took a few months. But they all came back, every single one. And the people who sold near the bottom missed every single recovery. An average correction, a 10 to 20% drop, historically bounces back in around 8 months. 8 months! The phrase, time in the market beats timing the market, sounds like a bumper sticker. It also happens to be backed by decades of data that nobody reads because it's not exciting enough. Here's what actually happens in a crash, emotionally. Optimism fades into anxiety. Anxiety tips into fear. Fear spirals into despair. Despair collapses into capitulation, the moment when the last holdouts give up and sell. That moment of maximum despair, when everyone is convinced the world is ending, is statistically the best time to own stocks, because that's when they're cheapest and the setup for future gains is strongest. The pattern is always the same. The stories wrapped around each crash are different. Oil shocks, bubbles, pandemics, banking crises, but the pattern underneath never changes. And yet, every generation of investors discovers panic selling for the first time as though it's a new invention. Welcome to Money Never Learns. So here's where we land. The psychological pain is real. Watching your portfolio get cut in half feels genuinely awful. That part isn't irrational, it's human. But the action that pain drives people toward, the sell button, that's where the billion-dollar mistake lives. Not in the crash, in the response to the crash. History has run this experiment hundreds of times. The investors who held on, who had a plan, who kept buying on the way down, they built wealth. The investors who bailed at the bottom funded those fortunes. That's how transfers of wealth work. Someone wins, someone loses, and the loser is almost always the one who panicked. When the next crash arrives, and it will because it always does, the headlines will sound apocalyptic, the TV pundits will be catastrophizing, everyone in your life will be talking about how different things are this time. Most of them will sell, most of them will miss the recovery, most of them will spend years wondering why their portfolio never really grew. You, on the other hand, now have a framework. fortress mindset, dollar cost averaging, diversification, cash reserves. You know what a crash actually is, inventory clearance. You know what the sell button actually does. It converts a temporary loss into a permanent one. And you know what the people who built real wealth did every single time the market fell off a cliff? Nothing. Mostly nothing. Sometimes bought more. Real fortunes aren't assembled during the calm stretches when everything feels fine and everyone feels like a genius. They're built in the chaos by the people disciplined enough to let everyone else panic first. The next crash is a question of when, not if. Your only real decision is which side of the wealth transfer you'll be on. If this reframed how you think about market crashes, subscribe to Money Never Learns. We cover the financial history most people never bother to read, because apparently that's how we got here. More importantly, share this with one person you know who goes into full meltdown mode every time the market drops. You might genuinely save them from a very expensive mistake. And leave a comment. What's the one thing you'll do differently when the next crash hits? Because it's coming. It always does. And you'll either be ready or you won't.